All right, good morning or good evening if you're watching this after dinner. This is my 11th State of the School address, and this one's a little different. It's my last, so I hope you'll pardon me if I get a little nostalgic at times. It's also something we're doing fairly casually. I'm here in my office. I got Raider is here, and for those of you with acute ears, you might be able to hear the sounds of the melodic sounds of the Marima monkeys going down the hallway. 11 years ago, we started the State of School address, and I think I brought it to North Cross, and really what it was at the time was a way to speak to the parents to assure them that the school would remain open. North Cross, circa 2010, circa 2011, was a very different place than it is today. I tell stories about it, and the staff always rolls their eyes at me, but truly there's nothing worse than running a business and realizing you don't have enough cash in your checking account to meet payroll for your employees. Thank God for David Willis. Summer of 2012, he happened to have some money in his checking account from a business transaction, so he lent us $250,000 to get through the summer. That's indeed how tough it was back in those ways. The other story I remembered was we surplused a bus out, but before we surplused the bus out, we determined it had better tires than the tires on the other buses. So we actually took the tires off that bus before and replaced them with the bad tires from our other bus, just because we didn't have enough money for brand new tires at that time. So it was tough. Deborah Jesse no longer works with us, but she would tell the story about that summer of 2012 when I don't think we had a single applicant come through the school on our way from trying to work a budget that was based on 515 kids into an actual budget that was based on 457. So we have come a long ways, and I'm not concerned about the future of the school. I'm very happy that we're sort of locked and loaded, and great things are on our horizon. So again, let's go into our State of the School address, and I'll tell you a little bit about the business of the school and how we're doing. The first thing that I usually tell folks in the State of the School address is that we're an independent school, and a lot of times people don't know what that really means. Probably the biggest two things about being an independent school is that we're mission driven. And what that means is that we're supposed to spend all of our money on perpetuating the mission of the school. Quite frankly, for us, that can be generally stated as our goal is to get every student into the best college for them. So again, everything we do goes towards that. The other part about being an independent school is that we are run by an independent, self-sustaining board of trustees. The board of trustees is kind of a thankless job. Sarah Boxley Beck is our current board chair, but it is a job that's much easier now, again, than it was 12 years ago. There's no midnight calls for cash flow purposes. But the board is tasked with ensuring that we do meet our mission, but also they're tasked with making sure that we conserve our institution for generations to come. So there is a sort of a strategic, long-term look at where we're headed in our future. We're also a private school. All independent schools by nature are private schools, but all private schools are not by nature independent schools. Take, for instance, a Roanoke Catholic. Roanoke Catholic is a private school. That means they charge tuition. They're not an independent school because they're run by the diocese, the Catholic diocese out of Richmond. So they're a private school but not an independent school. But all private schools share the fact that we're small businesses. North Cross School has about a $10 million a year budget. We have a physical plant that's worth about $20 million spread out over 80 acres of property. We have over 240 employees annually. That counts all of our part-time assistant coaches, all the way up to full-time staff and faculty and staff members. So we're not a small little business. We are a very complex school for our size. From that $10 million, you basically have 4 different divisions. You have ECP, our early childhood program, you have lower school, you have middle school, you have upper school. And the reason that's more complex is because, think of this, if you are a high school, let's say Benedictine High School in Richmond, and you have 600 kids in your school, you're the same size we are, but you have grades 9 through 12. It's a much simpler business model because you're only dealing with kids of a certain age group. Because we're pre-K through 12 and about 600 kids, it's much different. The other thing is we have a large athletic program for our size. We have over 30 teams, 22 different sports. This is a program that far exceeds the athletic program at schools comparable to us around the state. That is not a simple endeavor. We have the Perliman Learning Center on our campus, which houses crosswalks. So we have a very dynamic program for students with dyslexia, high IQ dyslexic students that come here to take part in our Orton Gillingham based instruction. So it is a remarkable attribute for our school, but a remarkable gift to our community to be able to help these kids achieve at the level that they need to achieve. We have a dormitory. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. We have a dormitory that will sleep up to 42 students. So in a sense, we can stretch our reach for upper school students around the world to bring the very best and the most fun students we can possibly find for our campus. And then finally, we have an international campus. We have the campus in Shanghai, which has 300 students in it, 300 upper school students. They board there on our campus. It's a beautiful campus. It's an 8-story tall building. It looks sort of like it belongs in Paris. It's kind of a French provincial look with statues and everything like that around it. But again, it's a very important part of what we do. And quite frankly, every year our Chinese campus returns a considerable sum of money to support the academic program here at North Cross and Roanoke. So again, not a simple business, and we're very fortunate that we have a remarkably capable faculty staff that keep things moving very cleanly, but by independent school standards, very efficiently. So it's a pretty well-run operation, and that's done because we have people that are capable of doing just about everything. So with that preamble, let's get into a little discussion about the state of the school here in 2022. Every school runs on students. The reason we enjoy working at schools is because the kids create such a fabulous atmosphere. It's a joy-filled place to work. This isn't to say that there aren't times when we have struggles with our students, but we always look at them as works in progress. And as long as we're better the next week than we were the previous week, we're very happy. It is tough when you run a school and you don't have a lot of students. As I said, it was pretty depressing when we were back at the 450 mark, had a lot of empty spaces in every classroom. The more kids you get, the more vibrant the atmosphere, the more exciting class discussions are, the better the quality of everything that you do because you have more kids to take part in it. So admissions provides that life's blood. Amazingly enough, we've had in the last 2 years over 250 new students begin their education at North Cross. We usually in an average year would have between 70 and 90, between a slow year and a good year. So 250 over 2 years is really an exceptional number. So I really do appreciate the hard work that Matthew Gilliland in our admissions department with his team, Kelsey Yardley, Lauren Horner, and Reed McGinn, all the work that they do to make the admissions process as smooth as it possibly can be. Currently, we're at a record high enrollment, record for the school. We've never been as big as we are right now. We have 577 students currently enrolled at North Cross. I anticipate, although Matthew Gilliland will be angry that I'm putting this on tape and sending it out, I believe we're going to grow slightly from that 577 number next year. As you'll see when we start talking about budget, you can see that we're conservatively budgeting at 575 for next year, which everything works at that. But you know, there's an outside shot we could hit 600. Sorry, Matthew. So with record enrollment, I show you the past 3 years of admissions activity. And you can see that several years ago we were in the mid-70s in terms of new students. That was kind of an average year. We were running around a little over 500 in enrollment. And then the last 2 years we've been well over 100 new students each year. If you notice, and I think probably the big thing about that, that admissions activity slide is that when you look at what we're projecting 575 with only 75, 76 new students. That's a different 75 or 76 than you see 3 years ago. Those were the total number of students that we admitted and came here 3 years ago. We're actually artificially constrained now. There will be many families that will apply this year, will be admitted, but we don't have a space for them. This is truly the first time that's ever happened at North Cross. And so that 76 could be 130 if we had that many spaces. But in most grades, we'll be full next year. You can also see in the next slide that we have a dormitory. And many of you don't really know a lot about the dormitory. Hopefully you've driven down Jefferson Avenue and you've seen right there across from Mass General Store next to Jack's, and you'll see the Boxley building, which houses our dormitory. The Boxley building basically takes the ground floor, the first floor, second floor, third floor, and those are the North Cross dormitory. We have room for 42 students. While we do aggressively pursue international students because we feel they bring some things to our campus that are different, we have a number of domestic boarders as well. And in fact, you can see from the list, we have students from 15 different countries currently enrolled in our dormitory. And we have 35 students. It's not been the easiest task to find international students when travel restrictions and visa restrictions are so great because of the pandemic. But we've done a great job, I think, of putting a fabulous group of 35 students in there, and I anticipate we will grow to fill the dorm next year at 42 upper school students. I guess the dormitory is sort of a formal response to the fact that we've always had international kids at North Cross, and that homestays are sort of were a sporadic way of dealing with international kids. If a student wanted to stay for more than 1 year, it was difficult for a parent to commit to an exchange student for more than a year. Some of our homestay situations were a little more mercenary. In other words, these were not North Cross families. These were families being paid to host students. And so we felt that we would have a greater control over our international student population if we could provide them with a safe and comfortable place to live. So the dorm has certainly served that purpose. You know, one of the things that I try to point out to parents when they ask me why the dormitory, I do point out that we've always had international kids, and this is a better way of doing it, as I just said. But I also like to tell stories about the relationships that our Roanoke kids make with these international kids. You know, one of the great examples is, many of you may remember Solomon Crocodine. Solomon was a small student at about 6'1", 330 pounds, mostly muscle, just from Wytheville, Virginia. And Solomon comes up to stay in our dormitory, and his father worked for AEP, and so he came up, and his roommate was a young gentleman named Ewan Spiker from Australia. And so I love the story of the small town kid from Wytheville getting on an airplane before his senior year and flying to Australia for 6 weeks to hang out with his buddy in South Australia. That's an experience that few students get to have, and it would only be made possible with our international community. Another one, Ryan Messick, graduated, went to WNL a couple years ago, and Ryan was good friends with one of our Chinese students, Peter Zhang, and so Ryan and Peter went off to Suzhou, about an hour by fast train outside Shanghai, and spent a month living in China, seeing that was like with one of his buddies. So we have these stories which I think positively demonstrate the power of an international relationship when you get here. These students, these international students in particular, also do fabulous things on our campus. I'm going to point a few of them out, and they may get embarrassed, but Lambert Rozinski, it's a great film clip on one of the local news stations of Lambert running up and down the bleachers at a girls' volleyball game this fall, trying to get the fans to do the wave. Lambert's from Poland, so I guess the wave is international. Another great one is Danny Fong. Danny is a Vietnamese student who's been with us for a couple years now, or a year and a half now, and Danny had never really seen an American football game when he got here, but this year he actually scored 3 touchdowns running as a running back, as a 5'2", 135-pound running back. Probably the best American football player in all of Vietnam right now, is my guess. And then Denzel Marufu, you can actually see on the slide one of the pencil portraits that Denzel has done for many of the faculty and staff at school. Just a fabulously talented artist and not a bad goalie on our lacrosse team. So these kids have done a great job of integrating into our school population, and they're an important part of who we are. There's a business aspect to the dormitory as well. Obviously, it brings in more revenue to the school from places outside Roanoke. But I think for us, the biggest thing that we find is it makes a seat in the upper school that much more valuable. In other words, when we bring our dormitory students in from around the United States and from other countries, it makes the admission to our upper school that much more competitive, which helps us be able to accept higher quality students that then make our upper school an even better place to be. So it's kind of a virtuous cycle. It builds upon itself, and I feel that our upper school in the near future is going to become an extraordinarily difficult place to get your kid into, which drives admissions down into lower grades. I don't have a lower school slide, and for that I apologize, but the lower school admissions picture is much the same as what we're seeing in the upper school. It is remarkably competitive to get a spot in our lower school. Just so you know, I went into the lower school office, or the admissions office this morning, and counted the names on the board. We currently have 63 students applying for 42 spots in early childhood. It's quite possible that by the end of February, for the first time ever that early, we will be completely full in ECP. Lower school's not much different. We've got a couple of grades with a few extra spots. It has been interesting in that we have a new head of school coming in. She happens to have 2 lower school kids, and we've had to tell her that we're going to send her 3rd grader on down to Faith Christian because we don't have any room in 3rd grade next year. I'm just kidding, Henry. If you're watching this, your mom's got some pull. We're going to be able to get you into 3rd grade, but it is that tight that we do have that running gag with Armistead and Henry Lemon. So again, an exciting place to be. Middle school, we have a little more flexibility in middle school, partly because our class sizes can range from 36 to 42 kids in any particular grade. But really the building is a small building with narrower hallways and a lack of student commons area. So it's a situation where we have a building capacity, and we're pretty darn close to that. We can't get many more in there before it starts to get uncomfortable and you're bumping into people in the hallway. So if you do see me smiling a little bit as I talk about the admission statistics, I can promise you that this school works a lot better at 577 than it did at 457. We're also extraordinarily fortunate to have a generous community. True story, I'm sitting at the big table in the front window at Alexander's with a couple of board members and my wife, and the board is meeting at Catherine Walker's apartment across the street in the old Hometown Bank building there, and they're voting to approve my contract. And so, I mean, I already knew I was coming, but the contract hadn't been formally approved. And so we're sitting there getting ready for dinner, waiting for that. And as new heads, when they come to a school, often do, they're thinking out loud about what they'd like to see happen and that. And I remember asking one of the board members about the possibility of a capital campaign, because we at that time were coming out of sort of a failed campaign that did manage to refit the middle school, but it wasn't as elaborate as we had wanted to do originally. And that board member turned to me and he said, you're not going to raise any money from Roanoke. It's tight as a tick. And I still remember that, and I wonder if he remembers telling that story to me. But the reality is, we have found over the past 11 years, we found the families at North Cross, the past parents, the board in particular, alumni, to be an unbelievably generous population. And we really have kind of two different types of giving. Some giving is for more long-term, lasting things. Some are gifts that are made to help the annual operating budget. There really are two different ways that you can help our annual operating budget. The first is the annual fund, and I think most people are familiar with the concept. This is money that parents donate to the school to allow us to do things that are special. It's that extra set of jerseys for an athletic team. It's purchasing another musical instrument. It's being able to do some things in the classroom with technology. It's allowing our teachers to take part in a master's program at very low cost to themselves. These are the kind of extras that the annual fund provides each year. And David Lake sends out periodic reminders and requests. And to the extent that you can donate to the annual fund, we're deeply appreciative. It does a lot of things for our campus. Increasingly, though, over the last 4 years, the biggest way that people have been giving to North Cross has been through the North Cross Foundation. This is a foundation that was set up explicitly for us to be able to access gifts that would receive state education tax credits. Just briefly, the way this works is somebody makes a gift to our foundation. This has to be used for scholarship to somebody, a student who's within certain income levels. And then once that's all approved, that person then receives a 65-cent tax credit on the dollar. And then when combined with the traditional deductions that you can get in charitable giving, many of our donors can receive up to 92 cents, 95 cents of tax relief for every dollar that they give. So in other words, $1,000, well, we don't do $1,000 gifts to the foundation. Let's say a $10,000 gift to the foundation winds up costing between $1,000 and $800 once you save on taxes. So that's a foundation gift. And really those two have been remarkably generously participated in. We'll raise a little over $500,000 every year. This year we're already down to within $39,000 of our $540,000 goal on the year. David Lake will be kicking off a participation campaign for the annual fund next week. The goal here is, yes, we still have $39,000 to raise, but the key for us is getting as many parents to participate, as many alums to participate in the annual fund, annually being the operative word, annual, and get folks starting to think about us from a charitable standpoint on a regular basis. It is something that schools brag about, the percentage of their parents that give. And so we figured let's get that last $39,000 with as many hands as we possibly can, because many hands make light work. You also see in this slide that there have been a number of gifts for endowment. We've had quite a few people decide that they want to give a gift that will last longer than just an annual fund gift. Now, we need the annual fund gifts, but the endowment does help. The way it works is if you have a $25,000 gift, that's a naming opportunity, and a student will receive $1,000 a year for a $25,000 gift, 4%. They'll receive the scholarship in the name that you choose to offer. We've had a very good year. We've raised over, I think, $200,000 in scholarships, many of them for Crosswalk. The Hoff family, I know, is a board member and very committed to that, as well as several other families have reached out to us, and that helps us immensely as well. On this next slide, you'll see it's an abbreviated slide. I wish it could have gone out another year or two, but that was my fault. You can see that this is money and pledges that we've raised for the legacy campaign over the last 3 years. And if you add those up for the math challenge, I think I kind of did a back of the envelope thing. That's about $7.5 million in pledges and cash that we've raised for the legacy campaign in the last 3 years. The actual total, if you go out another year longer, is $13.15 million we've raised in this campaign, which is by far a record campaign at North Cross. It's 2.5 times what we've ever raised before in a campaign. So again, a remarkably generous thing, which has allowed us to build these new buildings. I couldn't be happier with the participation. So I would say 11 years later, tight as a tick was not so accurate. Remarkably generous is a much more appropriate way to describe our population. And I speak for everybody, thank you. I really do. It's been amazing. You've been an extraordinarily generous community, and thank you so much for that. I'd also like to take this time to thank David Lake. David will be leaving us this year for retirement and some time spent in the Thousand Islands. David has worked in a number of capacities for us for the past 10 years, and he was actively involved in the legacy campaign and the success that we've seen in the last couple of years in our development department. David, with his team, Jamie Lee and Chris Rouse, are out there beating the streets for corporate support and alumni support. And then Jennifer Birch sits back coolly and calmly in our development department, and she processes all the checks as they pour in. So again, thank you guys for all that you've done for us. So we're in fine shape. Again, I smile at that statement. We're in fine shape. Our school is fully funded. There's very little deferred maintenance on our campus. The value of a seat at North Cross, in other words, how difficult it is to get that seat, has shot through the roof. And our community is remarkably generous. Those are the things that you need to be a great school. So we're moving forward with a sense of excitement. Obviously, one of the most exciting things that's going to happen here this summer is the arrival of our next head of school, Armistead Lemon. She'll start in July, but hopefully she'll be on campus a little bit in June as well. Armistead is a North Cross alum, class of 95, I think, maybe 96, which is way too young for me when I think about that. But she is a W&L grad, upped her academic game by attending the University of North Carolina, where she got a master's in English literature. Always good to have a Tar Heel on campus. And she's been an academic leader at a fabulous prep school in Nashville, Harpeth Hall, one of the creme de la creme schools that you're going to find across the South. And so she's going to bring with her a remarkable skill set, and I think she's going to take us to the next level. And as proud as I am of where we've gotten in the last 11 years, I am well aware that there is another level left for us to achieve. and I know that Armistead is going to take us there. We are just entering the place where we get to compete with the big boys in independent schools. Over the next 10 years, our goal is to be in the same breath as schools like Collegiate, Norfolk Academy, Potomac School, the very best that we've got in this area. So I hope you guys will welcome Armistead, give her an appropriate honeymoon when she arrives, and take the time to get to know her. And she's very different than me, which is a beautiful thing. And she's going to bring a different style and a different focus. And again, it's exactly what this school needs. So I couldn't be happier with her selection. So February 15th is a big date coming up. February 15th is when our contracts roll over to the next year. If you are remaining at North Cross next year, this doesn't mean, it means you don't have to do anything. You're automatically enrolled for next year. If you know you're leaving, if you're moving or moving on to a different spot, or if you think there's a chance you could be moving, what I ask you to do is to reach out to admissions before the 15th. One of the things that I'm trying to get across here is that these seats are more valuable. So if we know you are leaving, the chances are that we've got somebody else who wants your seat. So the earlier we can know that, the easier it is for another family to be able to make plans to come. I recognize that sometimes things just happen. So we're not going to get mad at you if you find out you're leaving in April and it's out of the blue. But if you think, let them know. It'll make life easier for a lot of folks. And so I guess as we're moving forward, we finally get to that moment that I always wait till the end so that you have to get through the whole thing. Some of you probably already just go to the end of the tape and figure out what the big number is. But I always give at this meeting the annual tuition increase. I'm extraordinarily pleased, and I do think it reflects the stewardship of the board and their awareness that North Cross is an expensive endeavor. So they have this year elected to move ahead with a 3.5% tuition increase, which given the inflationary times we're in, I think is an extraordinarily generous increase. It's easy for me to say when my kids are gone, and I don't have 5 kids like some families, but 3.5% is where we are. I like that partly because when we are a small school, sometimes a 3.5% increase would generate a much smaller increase in teacher salaries. When you're a full school, a 3.5% increase can generate teacher salary raises that are significantly higher than 3.5%. So I'm very glad that, again, in times of inflation, we're going to be able to significantly increase teacher salaries this year, which was one of the primary goals of our finance committee and our board. And we've been able to achieve both lower tuition increases and higher salary raises. So a good thing. There's nothing left for me to say now except to promise you there's never been a better time to be at North Cross. And I anticipate, even though Armistead Lemon may not use my words next year, that she's thinking the same thing at the end of next year. So I look forward to a great future, and thank you guys for a great 11 years. And I still got 4 or 5 more months. I'm not dead yet, so I'll see you around in carpool. Thank you so much.